All right. Welcome back, everybody, to Talk Openly. My name's Jac, and I am joined tonight by my ever wonderful and dear friend, Daniel.
Hello, Jack. Hi, everybody.
Hi. Yeah, it's so great to be back. And we're going to have, I think, a really good discussion tonight about a form of training and meditation that is of great interest to me, and I think a lot of people, called Lojong. And we're going to get to that in a little bit, but I'm excited about it. Yeah, and we're going to be actually starting a fun new segment with the Lojong slogans every week, where we do kind of a randomly generated Lojong slogan. We'll talk about it. So we'll kind
I'm
of
so
introduce.
glad for that, Jack. I've been meaning to incorporate Lojong practice into my regular meditation training for quite some time. And every now and then I manage to do it, but I think it's going to be really helpful to sort of have a weekly sort of like, yeah, I mean, there's so much to talk about there, so much to think about. And I think it'll be really helpful to have sort of a regular reoccurrence of the discussions around Lojong slogans.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. It'll be a good way for, us as practitioners to look into the slogans more and maybe even be thinking about it for the week. And then for viewers to maybe get an introduction or, just more thinking around this transformational mind training. So it's really cool stuff. Um, but yeah, Daniel, I want to hear a little bit from you. How are you feeling? What's been going on in your world the last week?
Well, the last week, I had this, you know how like when you're gonna do something kind of fun or exciting, like in your case, I think you went to Hawaii recently, and I think might be going
Couple
again,
weeks, yeah.
right? Exactly. So there's this build up to it, and all this kind of thought and anticipation and excitement. Then there's the experience itself, and then there's what comes after. Well, I had something similar to that. I really like hot springs, just good times, right? And a friend of mine and I had planned a trip to Wilbur Hot Springs here in Northern California. Have you ever been there?
I've heard of it, but I haven't been.
Oh my goodness, it is heaven on earth. Really amazing. I don't know
Was
how to
it
explain.
snowy?
Well, that was a fun part. I've lived here in the Sacramento and Woodland area for much of my life, and I have never, ever, ever seen snow on that mountain range. Never. I've
Whoa.
seen maybe a little tiny bit at the peaks, but it was amazing as we were driving towards Woodland from Sacramento. All of a sudden, like we saw the mountain range, and it was just white. The whole range
Wow.
from top to bottom. It was gorgeous, gorgeous. There's all kinds of auspicious signs on the way out there with rainbows, and the roads actually were closed. We were really worried because they like all of the routes leading into Wilbur were closed
Wow.
when we left Sacramento. And then when we hit Woodland, we stopped to get some groceries, and then the highway that we wanted to take up there actually opened up. And so
No
we were able to
way.
go through there. Yeah, it was really, everything really worked out nicely. And then we got to Wilbur, and there was snow everywhere, and like hot springs in the snow.
Oh,
Oh,
perfect. It's
uh, it doesn't
bliss.
get it doesn't get better than that. It's really cool. And so yeah, we were up there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and it was really magnificent. One of the waters there are not only hot, but they're chock full of all kinds of minerals and salts and whatnot,
Mm.
including, interestingly enough, lithium,
That's right.
which
Yeah.
which acts as a mood stabilizer of sorts. And so it kind of, like, I don't know if it's just, up here in my head or what, but it's a bit of, it felt like ultra relaxing, right?
Yeah.
Hanging out there. There's so much, yeah. Anyway, so like what happened was there was this gorgeous experience of being up there. And it was just like, I even got, like, I started a new book. It's called The Heart Attack Sutra.
Whoa.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
It's a commentary on the Heart Sutra that I
Uh-huh.
heard about from our friend Dirk, And it's been sitting on my shelf for a little bit. I took it with me, and I was like, got to start reading that. Oh, it was great. There was a Zen priest there from San Francisco who led some meditation classes,
Wow.
or not classes so much, but sessions. And it was really cool. I learned something new, something really, really helpful. So this has to do with posture. So normally I sit on my butt on a cushion, right? And my legs are either somewhat crossed or whatever. They're in front of me somehow. And he suggested, well, you can also sit on your knees, right? I think anyway, but I've tried that in the past and I really hated it. It didn't feel good. It hurt my hips, hurt my knees. It just did not feel good whenever I did it. But what he suggested was taking the meditation cushion, and instead of trying to sit on it as normal, trying to use it to like prop up your butt like you might normally do, he said to stand it on its edge vertically, right? So, and it gives like it was interesting. I tried it. I was like, well, I'll just try it for a few minutes, and if I don't like it, I know I can always just sit on it normal. But during the sit, I used that method, and it was really, really good. I'm definitely going to do it again. You need a strong cushion to do it that way. Like it needs to be a pretty firm cushion. But I found it really helpful. That was my takeaway, and it was really an enjoyable sit as well. Very, very zen.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
that's
like
so
that
cool.
was all good, right? So
Yeah.
that nothing but like really sort of like ecstatic relaxation, right?
Yeah.
Like the ultimate sort of relaxation. And then what was interesting is I noticed like as we were coming, like as it was time to leave and we're coming back down the hill, I had no reason to be anxious, but I started noticing like anxiety popping up and like thinking about like people that were probably trying to reach me and things that needed to be done and like whatever. Oh, that's the other thing is it's out of cell phone range, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
so I was sort of reluctant to turn my phone back on. And then eventually at some point I did, and it kind of blew up with all kinds of notifications and people sending me messages and stuff. And I noticed it soured my mood,
Yeah.
I got kind of like a little mopey, but like, I don't know. It's just like, ugh, right. Like this is ordinary reality. And then it kind of stuck around, right? So it's been, it's Tuesday now, so it's a couple of days since the weekend. And I noticed like I'm still sort of like kind of depressed about it all. And I can't
Yeah.
help but reflect like I'm kind of melancholy. I think that's the right word for it. And there's this sort of sense of like, yeah, like it's unworkable, right? Like, yeah, I can have there can be moments that are really pleasant or super relaxing or enjoyable or whatever. It don't last and you can't force it, right? And I
Yeah.
can't like hang on to it. And at some point things are going to change and shift and whatever. And so I'm sort of using it as my practice, like I'm like just bringing it in. I'm like, okay, all right, like bring some mindfulness to it, a little, just like recognition. Yep, that's how things are, and not to expect anything different. And
Yeah.
also knowing that just like the weather around here, it's like rainy and cold and stuff, and like even that's gonna change, right? The sun will shine and clouds
Right.
go away. I know, I recognize all of that, but at the same time, I'm kind of
Yeah. Yeah. You want that feeling to stick around. It's so nice to have just like that blissful, uh, you know, kind of escape. It's escape, but like that's Hawaii. I'm going to Hawaii in a few weeks from my birthday. And it feels like just incredibly luxurious. And I know there's this kind of thing happening this year, 2023 for me, where I'm kind of going like all out with the entertainment stuff, which is not
cool.
typical for me. But I'm also like applying my my Dharma knowledge that I've been developing as well. And so I was able to acquire Beyonce tickets for up here in Seattle, which is like mind-blowingly amazing. But I'm also like recognizing just how much like that energy of getting excited, like the morning that the tickets were going on sale, and I had gotten my like pre-sale, you know, like verified fan number. And there was just this like jitteriness and kind of like nausea, like, like if it doesn't happen, like that's gonna suck. And if it does happen, like how much money am I gonna be spending? And like, you know, it was just hardly good, right? And you know, fortunately, I did get tickets. They weren't as expensive as I thought they were going to be, but there was still this like lingering feeling of like unease.
Yeah.
You know, even like having got the tickets and like the excitement and like, you know, texting the people who are going to come with me, like, oh my God, we did it, you know. There was just this very like clear awareness of like in the same moment that like joy of getting what you want is also like the horror of getting what you want, right? Where it's
Yeah.
like, oh God, that was too much energy and, you know, money and all the things. And so it's just been interesting to watch. And I think I really appreciate the practice and teaching around equanimity, right? Where it's like, and you know, Lojong touches on equanimity and kind of seeing whatever comes on your path as part of the path.
Yeah.
And so, and also of course, like not clinging too tightly, because things go, as you said. So yeah, it's been an interesting couple weeks of seeing that like excitement over something, like such excitement over something so ephemeral, and how it really actually it's so impacting, like physically. You know, I noticed like
Yeah.
later in the day I was kind of tired and just
Yeah.
like a little bit burnt, you know, like from the adrenaline and whatnot. And yeah, emotionally and like also kind of spiritually affected, like, oh my gosh, like am I this like obsessed with something that's like not my spiritual practice, like what is going on, you know?
You're a
um
hardcore Beyonce fan.
I'm a hardcore Beyonce fan. It's gonna be messy, like
Yeah.
I'm gonna be straight cold sober, right? But I'm not gonna look it. It's gonna
That's
be so
hilarious.
good.
I got to ask you a question that I've something that I've been sort of reflecting on. I
Yeah.
heard you say, like, you know, you're essentially being mindful, right? You're watching your mind as it experiences the excitement and all the thoughts and whatever. Do you think, is there like some part of you that sort of wishes that you could sort of go back to being a little bit more mindless around it?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Like where you
like
could
the
just give in to the whole thing and just just like really just get hooked, right? And just get pulled into that hook, line, and sinker.
yeah. Well, there's part of me that that does feel that way, and um there's other things that I've felt that way about too, where it's like, wait, like relationships aren't what makes a life meaningful.
Right.
Sex isn't what makes life meaningful. Like what? I
Yeah.
like no, that sucks. I wanted
I
those
know.
things. I
I know.
wanted those things.
I'm so glad. Thank you for being honest about that. I not that I would expect anything other than that, but that's a little bit about what I've been reflecting on. Exactly what
Yeah.
you said, where I'm like, wait, all these things that I thought, you know, that like if I just pursued them and I got them, I was happy. Like, yeah, if I've got money and sex and I've got enjoyment, I've got entertainment, I have all the, if I have these things, then life will be good. And I had, it was sort of, you know, yeah, it was, you know, it wasn't realistic. It's not really like how things operate, but there was this sort of like really giving into it where I didn't notice, you know, I wasn't realizing at the same time, like, oh, right, yeah, you know, this isn't quite it. Like, it's fine
Yeah.
to enjoy, you know, not trying to like diminish the enjoyment of good, pleasurable things, not at all. But it does seem to sort of like, there's like sort of like it's the highs aren't quite as high or something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's definitely happened for me. And the cool thing is that I wouldn't go back.
No,
you
no,
know, and like,
because the lows are also really
because the
low.
lows are really low. Yeah. And the highs, like when I think about like my times of being like, yeah, just like really, really into my obsessions, right? So like kind of mindlessly into going after particularly relationship stuff
Yeah,
and sex and attention in that way. Uh it was also like just at the same time exciting, so painful. Like and you know, even when I felt that it was pleasurable, it had this edge to it, right? This edge of like anxiety and loss, and kind of like manic quality to it,
yes,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, where it's like you're like, yeah, this is good, this is good.
Yep.
But you know that it's gonna burn out, and yeah, I don't want that anymore. I
Right.
don't want that high anymore. I used to think that I love that high, and I don't. It sucks.
Right, right. Yeah, exactly. It's an interesting journey to watch it. Like you said, I wouldn't trade the mindfulness of the present moment or whatever you want to call it. I don't want to trade that for anything that it was like in the past. I recognize that indeed, actually, the truth, the sort of the promise is being fulfilled, right? There's been a massive reduction in suffering, both my own and that of those around me. I recognize that. I see it. I'm like, yeah, yeah. And then, but there is this sort of giving up as well, right? Like that sort of that crazy pursuit, that madness, whatever you want to call it, that I was so identified with. Got to give it up, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I remember taking refuge. I didn't realize that was like what I was going to be giving up. I kind of felt like it was more like, okay, I'm giving up more of my time to this. Like I'm going to be doing more practice and training and whatnot. And I know also like I was committed too. I was like committed, I'm going to be working on training my mind. But
Yeah.
um yeah, it's really incredible to look back and see like, okay, that's part of what it is like really, really coming to terms with the fact that the things that I still sometimes really believe are going to bring me ultimate happiness, are really just part of my suffering, or at least my incorrect view of them, that they're going to
Right.
bring me happiness.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was kind of mad honestly when I started recognizing that. There was a
What
day
did
that
I
I was
get
like,
myself into?
well, yeah, and I was kind of like, Shakyamuni Buddha, like, damn it.
Yeah.
Like this feeling of like, why did he have to do this? But I'm I'm so like incredibly grateful, because my experience of my emotions and my ups and downs are like pleasurable in a different way, like
Yeah.
in just a realistic and present way, and not like, sometimes I still get dragged by them, but I don't feel as hooked. And then I can just kind
Yeah.
of be in that experience of what it is, which is an impermanent phenomena like myself.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
Oh, well, show's over.
All right. That's it. That's all we got to say.
Boom.
The slogans help with all of this, right? Like
Yeah,
this is in fact, I think what's so promising about training with Lojong is that if we can implement it, right? If we can do it regularly, it helps to correct some of that, some of those tendencies. Anyway, like let's
absolutely.
let's talk about it. What do you think?
Let's talk about it. Yeah. Um, so yeah, Lojong's slogans, basically Lojong translates to training the mind or transforming the mind. And they're these kind of like just these short pith instructions, these little phrases, aphorisms. And the intent of these are that we're opening up to the wisdom and skillful means of the Mahayana path. Um, And the Mahayana path of Buddhism is that of, you know, the Bodhisattva. So really our intention being transforming ourselves, our minds, and our actions into bodhicitta, which is the wish that all beings be free from suffering. And so all of these slogans that, you know, we're going to be kind of talking about tonight are intended for that purpose. And it's interesting, I was watching a talk by Lama Jampa Daye, and he's a Lama in Britain. I don't know much about him, but it was a good talk, kind of an overview of the Lojong slogans. And he was saying that Lojong has no meaning outside the context of Bodhisattva training. And I found that interesting, although I somewhat disagree, because I think that there are some slogans that could really be of benefit to, like, you know, kind of a secular ethics. What, you know, the Dalai Lama talks a lot about, like having a secular ethics outside of religion, that people can kind of abide by. And I think Lojong can really provides a foundation for that. But I think what happens with Lojong being in the, like, the Bodhisattva context is that that's really, like, that was what it was made for, and it gives it so much strength, and the impact is so much stronger. So, you know, if you're watching this and you're not like an active practitioner, or, you know, you don't have a teacher, that's okay. I think you could still really benefit and get something out of Lojong training, but do know that it's going to have a much different impact on your mind if you are really working within the Buddhist Mahayana context, and ideally with a teacher, right? So basically, yeah, Lojong kind of, it helps us keep our motivation and refuge in this path. They're just really like these almost like thought bombs. That's kind of how I think them, where it's like, you know, I'll just read one of these or even think about it later on in my day, and it'll just kind of reorient me. It's very, very, sometimes very sobering to the mind, where it's like I can have a whole bunch of BS going on. And I'll read a Lojong slogan that really applies to the situation, and it's like, okay, all right. It's kind of like Shanti Deva. You know, we talk about Shanti Deva a lot, engaging in the Bodhisattva's deeds. Is that?
Ooh.
That'd be.
I don't know how you would translate it. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, the Shanti Deva is actually, you see a lot of kind of his influence in Lojong, and where you see that is in this sense that, you know, Lojong is all about really generating compassion for others and reducing the clinging to one's own individual being. And so you'll find a lot of resonance between Shantideva and Lojong. So I guess I could do a little quick history.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, the slogans were, well, they weren't in slogan form yet, but the teachings were introduced to Tibet by Lord Atisha. And that was around, let's see, 900, wait, I missed it. I'm not going to give you an exact number because I don't want to to lie and give you an accidental, but a long time ago, we'll say. He was
like
alive,
1,000 years ago.
Yeah, he was alive between 982 and 1054. So pretty far back. And what's interesting is that Those teachings were kind of developed around the same time as the Lam Rim teachings, but Lojong was kind of reserved for like disciples, like monastics, rather than householders. And Lam Rim was kind of used to, teach householders. And of course, I think there's probably some crossover there. But later down in the road, in the history of Lojong, they became more widely shared. And this is when this guy, I don't know if you can see, Geshe Chekwa Yeshe Dorje, he really kind of condensed all of these teachings of the Lam Rim and categorized them into these 7 different points, under which there's 59 total slogans. And that's something I really love about Tibetan Buddhism, is that there's like these lists, right? There's like so many lists, and like things are numbered, and it's very categorized. There's like this incredible way that Tibetans really made this structure for all of these incredible teachings. And I think that's really helpful for a lot of us to have some structure. So some of the main topics are basically like I said, reducing self-clinging, developing compassion, and you'll see that in kind of like the slogans about equalizing self with others, and others being, more important than self, actually. And something interesting is that, we can do these slogans without having any formal teaching. That's something that, another thing that Lama Jampe Taya was saying, is that, there's all this kind of scholarship, intense scholarship that you can do in Tibetan Buddhism, right? And there's also incredible amounts of different types of meditation. But Lojong can really be this kind of standalone. And I think that is incredible for those of us who are householders, right? Or people who just don't have as much time in our day, is that these can be these really pith instructions that we can check in with.
There is a sense, though, one of the challenges that I have with it is that they are so pithy, they are so condensed that
Sure.
a lot of times it's actually one of the things that has actually prevented me from incorporating it into my regular practice, is that I find that I'm probably, in many cases, if I just read the slogan, I'm missing the point, sort of, right? I can read the slogan and then I can meditate on it, but in some cases I'm totally missing like what it's about even. And I kind of feel like oftentimes I'll read one of the slogans and I'm like, I have no idea what that even means, right? I have no idea what they're talking about. And then I'll go and I'll Google it or something, and the results are sort of, like it's mixed, right? Like I can't always get at, I can always find something. But I tend to, like, I wish that there was a little bit more, I don't know, like I wish I knew it better, like I understood it better.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, because you can kind of imagine that it's like this tip of the iceberg,
Yeah.
or like very, very, very tip of the iceberg.
Oh man, it's the
so
tippiest. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's like part of the beauty of it for me, is that there is this kind of almost like mysterious quality to some of them. And something that I really appreciate about this particular text that Lama put together for the temple, is that some of them have like just little brief explanations.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the many important parts about having a teacher, is that they can give you just a little bit more detail that is relevant, to our lives, to make it make more sense. And then with that, we can start seeing a little bit more of the iceberg. But yeah, I totally know what you mean. It can be
Yeah, it
kind of
is so
mysterious.
it's so dense. It's so dense. I don't know if you've noticed, but I actually have the Lojong sayings on a poster up here behind me.
Nice.
I've had that up for a while. That's usually my reference point. It's a little poster about the 7 points of mind training, and it was put together by Chogyam Trungpa. And what I found when I was sort of thinking about this talk, and my frustration with the density of it all and my lack of knowledge in the Dharma is I actually came across something that I found helpful, and I think I will continue to find helpful, which is there was one of Chogyam Trungpa's students named Judy Leaf. She oftentimes shows up. So the times when I've gone off and Googled something, like what's this slogan all about? Oftentimes it's her articles that show up like on Tricycle, but they're like hidden behind a paywall or something. But I found it a whole PDF that is just it's like a day by day every single slogan and a brief exposition or explanation of what it's about. And I'm going to use that because I found what I saw in there seemed like really, really helpful.
Yeah, I like that idea of doing it as kind of like a daily devotional.
Yeah.
And yeah, to have that little bit of explanation can be,
Just a
yeah,
little bit. Just a
yeah,
little food for thought, like you were saying about the pamphlet there that Lama put together, right? Just 1 or 2 sentences is sufficient.
right. Definitely. Yeah. And I think too, in addition to that, having that little bit of help, also just remembering too that, these slogans aren't meant to be understood in one sitting. There's a reason why they're so pithy. And I think too, like, working with a teacher over your lifetime, or even just, developing your Dharma knowledge, things are going to show up in a different way as you develop on the path.
Yeah.
And I think even if you were to just do Lojong as your practice, later on down the path, you're going to understand what some of these things mean.
Yeah, they can. So like for me right now, each one of the slogans is like one of those teething rings that you give, to like a baby. And then eventually it'll turn into like full on steak and potatoes.
Totally. Well, and there's some too for me that I'm like, that's a llama slogan. That
Right.
one I'm like not even gonna try to explain on the show tonight because that's a llama one, But actually I think there's so many on here that we've really gotten into discussions about on this show. There's some really applicable ones. So or they're all applicable, but ones that I can actually, like get a grasp on. So maybe we can go into it a little bit. We can go into the different, the 7 mind points and some of the slogans underneath those. What do you think?
Heck yeah, let's do it.
Great. Yeah, so the first point is to train in the preliminaries. And the preliminaries are also known as the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma. So those 4 thoughts are maintaining an awareness of the preciousness of human life, maintaining an awareness of the impermanence of our human life and everything else, knowing that everything we do has a result, karma, and then contemplating that everything within samsara is suffering. And the way that Lama phrases this, I think, is just so helpful for me, and I'm going to read it. Contemplate that as long as you are too focused on self-importance and too caught up in thinking about how you are good or bad, you will experience suffering. Obsessing about getting what you want and avoiding what you don't want does not result in happiness. It is ego.
Hey, is that what we were talking about at the outset?
I think maybe so. Samsara is suffering.
Aww.
I know. So it's great. So that point 1 is just one slogan, and it's all 4 of those points that turn the mind to Dharma.
I've heard Lama, I think I heard Lama say, or maybe I heard somebody quote Lama as saying that when he notices, when people have stopped, or when they stop their Dharma training, their practice, it's because they have stopped training in the preliminaries. They've lost sight of these 4 points, these 4 thoughts.
They're huge. They're huge. They're so foundational. Yeah,
if we can't remember those 4 points, I think it's hard to do the rest of it, right?
Definitely.
It all comes back down to this, to these 4 thoughts.
Yeah. It's one that I actually after I do my shamatha sit in the morning, I do just kind of a brief little contemplation on each one. And it's funny, my mind has this tendency to kind of go stale with things that I like do repetitively. And so I need to find like ways every once in a while to change it up. You know what I mean?
No, I know what you mean. I know sometimes it just becomes rote, and like you're not actually thinking about it. The way I use the 4 thoughts, I think it's actually kind of funny. I when I get like when I start to get not so much doubt, but when I notice, like when my practice gets a little bit out of routine, gets a little shooken up, whatever, if I start feeling like, oh, I'm not doing enough, or it's too much, or I don't understand it, or whatever, if I notice that I'm actually kind of suffering because of my practices, or because of my lack of it, or whatever, something related to that, like when it starts to take sort of a negative, sort of critical edge, then I'm like, let me remind myself about these 4 thoughts, right? And then it naturally sort of like, just sort of right, okay, right, stabilizes.
Yeah, it kind of like dissolves it a little bit.
It's sort of like the lithium in the water over at Wilbur.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I found I even use it as like an antidote during my shamatha practice for and that was something that Lama instructed me to do, is that when I notice excitement, because that's the one that I'm always in, pretty much 99% of the time I'm in excitement, 1% maybe sloth, but so in that excitement phase, really kind of touching in on some of these. And I found that what's especially useful is the one on impermanence.
Yes.
And something Lama told me in Darshan was like, the things that you're thinking about are really not that exciting.
Right.
And so even like thinking about that I got Beyonce tickets in shamatha, like that's not that exciting. Yeah. Believe it or not. And just reminding myself like those things are gonna pass really fast. And so just keep coming back. And it's really sobering in the best way. Yeah.
Agreed. That's great advice.
Yeah. So point two is what Lojong calls the main practice, which is training in bodhicitta. And that was something that the first slogan on their slogan too, that we had talked about earlier before the show, was regarding all dharmas as dreams. And it says here a little explanation. Although experiences may seem solid, they are passing memories. So another kind of recall to impermanence, right? Which it comes up a lot in Lojong. Yeah. And then there's ones that are like, okay, I can't touch that right now without my teacher, like self-liberate even the antidote, like complicated, right? It's complex.
Right.
Rest in the nature of alaya, the essence, the present moment. But they're beautiful, right? Like they're these little poetic phrases where, like in post, I love this one. This is one that I try and remind myself of. In post meditation, be a child of illusion. And that just for some, like, I love thinking about everything else in my life outside of meditation being post meditation. that it's like, it's still in some ways meditation,
Right.
it's tied to it.
Yeah, it should
And
be. Right.
absolutely. And it has this effect of being like, uh, okay, everything I'm engaging with, it's just kind of like the play of like impermanence. And like my mind putting constructs on things, putting constructs of permanence on impermanent things. And so just recognize that's an illusion that I'm engaging with.
That's
Uh,
right.
it's
And
another,
slogan number 6, the one that you're talking about, is directly related to slogan number 2. There are like these two bookends on the absolute bodhicitta section. So in one, regard all dharmas as dreams. Okay, so there's this sort of sense of like, okay, so there's all the sort of the dreamlike quality of all these phenomena that appear so solid, but then this child of illusion too, right, is a dream. Right? So like it's both. It's right? Like nothing escapes this. It's all.
nothing. Yeah. And that's why it's under, that's why they have this absolute bodhicitta section under point 2, and then it goes into relative bodhicitta, which, relative bodhicitta is kind of like our everyday experience in the relative world, in the world that, we have to engage with on a daily basis, where we're not consciously thinking about ultimate experience, the ultimate nature of reality, but how important it is to have this awareness. And I love that in relative bodhicitta they talk about Tonglen, and that to really engage in this kind of relative experience in this world of thinking there's a solid me that's separate from a solid you, that actually doing Tonglen is this beautiful way of like kind of breaking that down a little bit and starting to engage in that selflessness of compassionate action.
I thought this was interesting. You've talked about Lojong for quite some time. I think it's been part of your practice for a while. But I didn't really take like a sincere interest in it until Marie told me that Tonglen comes from Lojong, right?
Yeah.
Like she's like, no, the whole Tonglen practice, which I think is like the most magical, most transformative, most amazing practice of like I've ever experienced, right? And it's like, yeah, it's actually just a couple of slogans and like out of 59, right? So that's what
Yeah.
actually made me, I was like, okay, I better take this a little bit more seriously, right? It's something that I think is so powerful and so good. It's just a small component of that the whole thing must be amazing.
That is really cool. Yeah, I didn't even realize that it was like that, you know, tied to it. That's
Mm-hmm.
incredible. Yeah, and it's, just this kind of simple sending and taking, practiced alternately on the breath is how they describe it, bringing in the suffering, sending out compassion, through the transformation of bodhicitta.
And
Beautiful.
importantly, the last Tonglen practice that I did with Marie, it was interesting because I told her, I said, I had not been studying the Lojong sayings. So I told her, I was like, sometimes I really like, so Tonglen, the advice is to always start the practice with doing sending and receiving for yourself. And I just was talking to her before the practice and I said, sometimes I kind of like, I feel like, I'm good. I don't really need this. Like, let me just get started on other people. They need it more than me, and I just, I was like, I kind of like, I still do it because it's the advice, but I kind of feel like maybe I can just skip it, right? And just get into like the meat. And she was like, no, isn't that interesting that you would deny yourself this, right? Isn't that
Right.
fascinating that somehow, like, oh, not me, I'm good enough. Like, so she kind of
Yeah,
turned
I'm
it on
separate.
me. That's right. That's right. And she was like, that seems to indicate maybe even a greater need for starting with yourself. And I was like, oh, man.
You got yourself caught, Daniel.
Every time, every time.
Oh man. And so yeah, point 3 then goes into the transformation of bad circumstances into the way of enlightenment. And this is some meaty stuff, right? So
Yeah, it is.
transforming adversity into the path. And one thing I find really interesting about Lojong is that it really wants you to take everything in your life, not reject anything. Every single thing that you come across, it's part of the path.
Yep.
Don't reject it, right? And this one, oh, this one gets at me. Sometimes I get mad at this slogan. But slogan 12, drive all blames into one. Now, what does that mean for me? So me and my experience, my little bubble, my little me in here is being affected by everything out there. It's all their fault, you know? And what the slogan does is it turns that on its head and says, actually, the way that you're thinking about this is the problem. That's what's to blame, is this self-centered mind that says it's all about me. And when you're not giving me what I want, then I'm going to be mad and sad. And so I get mad at that one.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah, it is a tough one. How about 13? Be grateful to everyone.
Oh, not that one person.
Everyone.
No, not them.
That one's so good. And I think I had to start like kind of small with this one. And it's actually helped me like have a lot of gratitude for like non-human beings in my everyday life. So I've become like really fond of seagulls and crows.
Yeah.
And part of that is, I think, Lojong, like, be grateful to everyone.
Yeah.
Like, look at this being that is here with me in this world, this samsaric world. I'm grateful to you. We're here together. And then like from that kind of smaller scope of like, okay, I can be okay with a spider being in my room. I'm grateful to that spider, even though I'm kind of scared of it, or, you know, like seeing a seagull or whatever. Then it can expand. It can be, oh, actually, I'm kind of grateful for that person who snubbed me, like walking down the hallway, you know, because it's a reminder that, oh yeah, I am, my mind is just like so immediately coming up with these judgments. And if I can make myself aware, like through these little these pith instructions, that no, actually I need to be grateful to that person because they're holding up a mirror for me.
That's right. I think number 13 actually is the way in which like everything and everyone, every being becomes our teacher.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Which can, you know, in the moment be irritating, be aggravating. Yeah. Oh man. So yeah, transforming adversity into the path. Important stuff. Then point 4, showing the utilization of practice in one's whole life. So kind of, you know, applying the practice everywhere. So related to the last point. And one, I won't get into it because I don't have enough experience and knowledge and whatnot. But one of those slogans is how you can even use death in your practice, your own death, as, you know, a practice of Lojong and bodhicitta. So yeah, check that one out. Ask your teacher, read a little bit more.
Yeah,
I don't know it.
You know, I like there are only 2 slogans under section 4, and
right, isn't that interesting?
It is. And the first one, I'm like, you know, I'm like, all right, practice the five strengths. And I'm like, I can meditate on that. I think, you know, I gather it, you know. And number 18 is actually basically saying the same thing, but when you're dying. And man, it's like, it's complex, right? And there's stuff in there that I don't understand. I've only read about, and it's definitely one of those take it to Lama
Yeah,
questions.
take it to Llama. Yeah. And then even use this one slogan for your meditation for like a year. You totally
Yeah.
could, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Then point five, evaluation of mind training. So kind of like measures or signs that you're maybe seeing some progress. I really love slogan 21. Always maintain only a joyful mind. Um, Again, sometimes that can feel a little bit like, "Nah, I don't want to." But I do notice that when I'm in that kind of state of mind of like irritated and frustrated, when I remind myself of that, like, oh yeah, always maintain only a joyful mind.
Hmm.
There's this way that it kind of reels me in a little bit,
Right.
and reminds me that I actually can approach what I'm dealing with some sweetness and also kindness and compassion to myself.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so good. I love it. And then also, going back to slogan 19, all dharmas agree at one point, and then kind of the explanation, all Buddhist teachings are about lessening the ego, lessening one's self-absorption. So maybe a sign that you're taking some steps off the Mahayana path would be that, your self-clinging thoughts are increasing,
Right.
or or you're seeing people. Mama loves to say, like, if you're still seeing people as like stupid and cruel only, then you're not doing your practice right. There's
That's
something that you need
right.
to adjust. Because
Yeah.
actually we start to see people as like really beautiful and creative and interesting, and like, wow, look at how they're dealing with their
That's right.
whole samsara. Yeah. um Point six, man, point 6 and 7, there's a lot of slogans in these 2 points, and
Like the majority of them.
it's like the majority. I know we could like spend a whole several months on these. Point six is discipline of mind training, so kind of like your commitment in the training, as well as like not getting cocky, so kind of
Yeah.
checking yourself a little bit. So for example, slogan 26, don't ponder others, don't take pleasure contemplating others' weaknesses. Slogan 28, one of my favorites, abandon any hope of
Yep.
fruition.
Yep.
Don't get caught up in how you will be in the future. Stay in the present moment.
Talk
Brilliant.
talk about giving up spiritual materialism, huh?
Absolutely. I think so much of point
Yeah.
six is about avoiding spiritual
It
materialism.
is.
That,
Right.
yeah, trying to get the worldly pleasures that
Mm-hmm.
we're seeking through spiritual practice.
That's right.
Um, yeah, yeah. Slogan 36, one of my favorites that I've been thinking about a lot lately. Don't act with a twist. Do good deeds without scheming about benefiting yourself.
Right. Right.
And what's funny is that, like, I'll read these and I'll get kind of embarrassed, right? I'll feel a little bit of that, like, kind of shame feeling, like, oh man, I do that.
Yeah.
But turns out I'm not alone, right?
Oh,
I'm not
right.
the person that Atisha wrote these for. It's all of us. All of us do this.
Right. That's why it's helpful to develop it as a regular practice. It's like they're like, like the kind of the guardrails, right? If we actually are
Right.
practicing this, it'll help us to see when we're kind of going off the rails a little bit, and also to see some of, like those tendencies that are just human nature that will take us off the path. So
Totally.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, there's some excellent
Bringing
stuff
some
in there.
awareness. Yeah. Yeah. And then point 7, guidelines of mind training. So kind of like some precepts. Um, yeah, let's see, some ones that I really get caught up in. Train wholeheartedly, right? Slogan
Mm,
54, just very simple. Train wholeheartedly. Um, Other ones, 56, don't wallow in self-pity. That's a good one.
can I tell you
That
now?
one comes up a lot for me.
Now, as a Leo, Slogan 59.
I
The
should have
last,
guessed.
the, the last one on the list.
Yes, I love this one.
Don't expect applause. That one just breaks my heart.
I know, me too.
We're really, so all this hard work, all this training, and all this joyful effort, and what, like, no one's gonna be like clapping at the end of the line and like going like rooting for us?
Right.
Nope, come on.
Right.
I mean,
Yep.
maybe it will, maybe, very well.
In the Buddha
But
realms, they'll be clapping and cheering for us.
totally,
Yeah.
totally. But that's not why we're doing this, and we can't expect it. But I love that one, right? Like that one really gets to my heart, where I'm like, oh, no one's gonna be like, holding you up on some kind of a pedestal as a result of all of this, or at the very least, it's not why you should be doing.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, Lama was saying recently that his teacher would tell people, like the real practice is the one you do when no one is watching.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you've got your guard down, how are you treating people? How are you, treating others? How are you keeping your mind? So yeah, not expecting that kind of response for us doing the right thing, right?
That's right.
Yeah, love it. So that's kind of just a very, very brief overview of Lojong, and I'm so glad that we were able to do that. I do want to kind of quickly, if I can share my screen, I want to show people where you can find the random Lojong slogan generator. Does that sound good?
Yeah, do it. Tell them where it is too, in case they're just listening.
Yeah, okay, great. So I'm going to share my screen and then I'll tell you all about it. You see it, Daniel?
I do.
Great. So if you go to the Lions Roar Dharma Center website at lionsroardharmacenter.org, you'll see at the top, there's a little bar that says teachings. Yeah, I was like, where is it? And then you kind of scroll down, it says random Lojong slogan. You click on that. And it's this really, really great little service that we've got on here. It kind of describes what is Lojong, and it has some books about Lojong, which is really great, some websites that you can learn more. And then the cool thing is it has this button here that you can click. And if all goes well, there we go. You see, you have a random Lojong slogan available to you with these really rad, beautiful Buddhist pictures and of like sculptures and artworks that aren't necessarily related to the slogan, but are just kind of cool. So you get a random one each time as well. So I recommend checking it out. And this is actually what Daniel and I are going to be doing each week. We're going to be, after we kind of check in and say hi, we're going to do a random Lojong slogan and chat about it for a bit before we get into the full-on show. So
maybe it'll even end up being the full-on show.
Seriously, yeah. I mean, with all the discussion that we could get into tonight, I'm sure we could.
Right. There's a lot to unpack.
There sure is. Oh man, Daniel, thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for starting to unpack some of these things together. It's really fun.
Jac, thank you for providing the antidote to my melancholy.
Oh.
My spirit is uplifted. The clouds have parted. The sun is shining. All is well. This is good stuff.
I'm so glad. Man, that's what Sangha's for.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
That's right. We need each other.
I'm so thankful for you.
I'm so thankful for you too. Yeah, and for everyone out there who's joining us tonight or afterwards, we're so glad that you came, and looking forward to next week.
Be well. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you, Daniel. Bye.
Bye, Jac.